Okay, in our previous video we created this fancy chart, and the first thing I'm going to do, since our focus is now not on formatting, is to clean this up and make it a little easier to view. First thing is we can close the formatting window on the right. I can click anywhere I want on the chart, or actually better yet, somewhere up in a corner where I'm not selecting a title piece or a chart area piece or something. And then let's just go to design and pick something simple. Okay, in this scenario, we're going to say that the other class that I teach, my other 6th grade class, was very enamored with this, and they wanted to participate and decided that instead of having their own graph, they wanted to be able to compare their choices with this class. I think that's a great idea. It makes the data more interesting. Okay, so they came and they took the survey. Okay, so they've taken their survey data here, but now I don't really have a way to determine easily which is 6S and which is, say, 6D or something. So I'm going to insert a column in front, and I'm just going to put the class name there. Now that's all well and good, but perhaps I've done some formatting to this. Perhaps I don't want to redo the entire graph, so I don't want to select and just create a new graph. Notice if I were to do that, however, I would include this blank cell. There is no way to select this and this without taking the blank cell, and Excel is smart enough to know that this is what I'm doing and kind of ignore this. It won't confuse it. But what I would like to do is reuse my current chart. So I'm going to right-click on it and say Select Data. If you don't see the Select Data option, it may mean that you've clicked on it in some area that you shouldn't have. So, you've got your bar graph selected, and oh, there it is. But it's possible when you don't see the options you want, it means your selection is not correct. Okay, so there we go. And you can see it's in the little dashed lines, the running ants. It's showing you what's already selected. But if you just click this button in the corner, there it is, I can now reselect, hit the Enter key, click OK, and I've now got a nice bar chart with double bars, or column chart with double entries. They're color-coded, so one represents one class and one represents the other class, but I really can't tell from this which one represents which class. So here's a case where I'm going to turn on my legend. There it is. And I'm just going to turn it on. I'll let it go wherever it wants to go, although I could use this arrow to pick options. Great. My only issue is that I don't really like it over here. Maybe I'd prefer it in the lower corner. So that's very easy. You just click on it. Note that when I move my mouse to the edge, to the border, it turns into a four-sided arrow. And that's the point where I can click it and move it. I can also reshape it. And there we go. Now I can click on my main chart and use up the space available to me, so it's not crowded. Okay, if you ever have a legend that's not displaying everything you think it should be displaying, it may mean that it's not sized correctly. So if I had 3 or 4 or 5 classes in here and only saw 2 in the key or in the legend, it might mean I just needed to resize the box and change that, especially once I've made alterations to it. At that point, it may not auto-resize to include everything. Okay, let's look at another option. Let's say that there are 5 classes in the school, and so I'm very quickly going to populate this with data, and then I'll come back to the video. Okay, I've used that rand between formula to populate this, so my numbers may be a little off. Some classes may be larger than others, etc. But I quickly got some data into there, and you can see that what I did is I wound up with 3 6th grade classes and 3 5th grade classes. And I entered the data perhaps in the order that I saw the classes during the week. Now, I could reorder this. I could, basically I could just sort it. Or I could, cut and paste and get things in a proper order. But let's pretend for a moment that I don't want to do that. And what I want to do is I want to show a chart that compares only the 6th grade classes. Now the first thing is that I noticed that I don't like this title wrapping to 2 lines. So I could simply manually adjust the size of the font. And that would take care of that problem. Now the other problem I have is I want to make this graph that includes this row of information, this row of information, and then skip 5F and get this row of information. So how can I do that? Well, I'll start out by doing the same thing that I did previously when I wanted to reselect my data. So I'll right click and I'll say select data. I'll click here. I'll select the first or adjacent section of data, and then I'm going to hold my control key down, CTRL, and that will allow me to select non-adjacent rows or non-adjacent columns. Enter and OK, and I've got a beautiful bar chart. The only thing I don't really care for is I don't like this final color that was automatically chosen for that third bar. So I'm going to click. Notice that all of those bars are selected. And I'm going to use a shortcut. I'm going to right click on one of the selected bars, and you'll notice now I'll get a fill and outline color pop up right here because these are the most common options. And I want to change that, say, to yellow. No, maybe that's too much. There you go, green. Okay, so another way to get in format. Notice that it added it to my legend. If I thought that that legend was not prominent enough, I could come in and increase the size. Note that I did lose the third class, and therefore I'm going to have to resize the box to get it back. So those are some basics of working with a bar graph or a column graph, and let's look at a couple of other options quickly. I have some data prepared here. These are the days of the week, and these are the high temperatures of the day. So if I select that data, I can insert a simple line graph. Now you have to be careful, just as with the bar chart, you have to be careful with these additional options. They're not always just another visual way to look at it. They mean something different. So this is a stacked line graph as opposed to a simple line graph we might expect. This is 100% stacked line, so various options you can look into, but just know that you've got to be a little careful about which ones you select. Essentially, this 2D line graph and this 3D line graph are the same thing represented in a different way, although I find these 3Ds sometimes, depending on the chart type, a little difficult to work with. So there you go. If I want to format this, I would go through the same process I did before. There you go, some kind of title. I would turn on my axis titles more than likely. Now, if you want to get the degree sign in there, there are several ways to do it. You could go to, insert symbols, and you'd have to look through this list here until you found the degree symbol, which is right there. An alternate way, however, is when you're in typing, hold down your Alt key and type 0176 and you hit enter. Now I do have to warn you, if you're doing this on a laptop, it can be a little problematic. The 0176 should be done from the numeric pad over on the right of a computer. If it's not, there are ways to get it to work with the numbers along the top of the keyboard, but that usually requires holding down some other combination of keys. It may be function, it may be function and scroll lock. It depends actually a little bit on the device, which is why perhaps using these symbols, if you're on a laptop, is a little easier. Okay, let's give this thing a quick format, or quick design rather. There you go. Okay, so there's my high temperatures of the week. If I wanted to make this high and low temperatures, let me do something we'll take a shortcut here. Now I've simply subtracted 20 from every high temperature, which wouldn't be very realistic, but that's what I've done. An alternate way to reselect this graph, if you notice, it's now outlined in two colors. There's kind of a purple color along the top, and that's showing us what our labels are going to be. And there's this bluish box. If I grab that corner and drag down, that's going to reformat or reselect as well. Also, let's come over here and just label these highs and lows. And again, selecting the graph will show us which data is selected, and then if you drag those over, oh, that didn't work out so well. So let's bring it back. Excel didn't figure out that these were additional labels, that these were not actual data points. So there would be some other ways to redefine those things, but probably the easiest thing to do at this point is to just reselect your data. Okay, fantastic, but I don't see those labels. Notice they're now in a third color, so that's your indicator that it now knows that these are an alternate type of labels and that we're going to use them for the legend. And this time let me select where the legend goes. It goes up on the top. Oh my goodness, that's great, except that there's really not much of a distinction here. So I'm going to take the line. I am going to go to the color of the line, and I'll say I'd like a solid line in that color. It looks like it, there you go, and now it reflects in the key. If I didn't like the thickness of my lines, I could adjust those. I would do that for the other as well, just to keep them consistent. I can reselect my graph at this point if I want, so if I don't like this particular line graph, I can right-click in the corner and say change chart type, and I'll go to that 3D graph, which I don't really care for, so let me undo that. But you can see that you have lots and lots of options. I will return with one more video on charts, and this will be a little shorter, and this will be addressing pie charts. Now, bar charts, pie charts, and line charts are not the only three types of charts by any means, so you can certainly look into the other options, but we'll take one more look at some options.